My sister Fallon earned her Navy SEAL call sign Falcon during her first week of training, but when our unit deployed to Somalia 3 years later, we discovered the real reason behind that name had nothing to do with her speed or precision, and everything to do with a secret she'd been carrying that would either save us all or get us killed. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. I'm Staff Sergeant Dorian Hayes, Marine Corps Force Recon, and I thought I knew my little sister better than anyone. We grew up in the same house in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where our father's military decorations covered one entire wall of our living room. We shared the same dream of serving our country after Dad was killed in action in Afghanistan when Fallon was just 18. We even ended up in the same theater of operations, working joint missions between my Marine unit and her Navy SEAL team. But standing in that marketplace in Mogadishu, watching her disappear into a crowd of hostile locals while speaking a language I didn't even know she could understand, I realized that everything I thought I knew about Fallon Hayes was wrong. See, when Fallon first arrived at BUDS training, the instructors nicknamed her Falcon because she moved fast and hit targets with surgical precision. Her teammates, Lieutenant Cruz Mendoza and Staff Sergeant Brick Johansson, thought it was perfect because she seemed to have this natural ability to spot threats before anyone else. Even Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, who rarely handed out compliments, said she had the eyes of a bird of prey. For 3 years, that's what we all believed. Fallon was Falcon because she was quick, deadly, and had perfect vision under pressure. The first female SEAL to make it through training in her class, proving herself every single day in a world that wasn't ready for her. But names, I learned that day in Somalia, sometimes carry secrets that run deeper than anyone realizes. And sometimes those secrets are the difference between coming home alive and coming home in a flag-draped coffin. My sister had been preparing for a war none of us saw coming, and when the moment arrived, we discovered that Falcon wasn't just what her teammates called her. In Somali, Falcon means the one who watches and waits, and Fallon had been doing both far longer than any of us knew. This is the story of how my little sister saved our lives with a secret she'd been keeping for 2 years, and why sometimes the most dangerous missions are the ones where you discover you never really knew the person fighting beside you at all. Growing up as a Hayes meant understanding that service wasn't just a career choice, it was a family legacy. Our father, Master Sergeant Robert Hayes, had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before an IED took his convoy in Helmand Province. Fallon was a senior in high school when we got the news, and I watched my 18-year-old sister transform from a girl who painted her nails bright pink to someone who could field strip an M4 rifle blindfolded. "I'm going to be a SEAL," she announced at Dad's funeral, still wearing her black dress but with mud on her shoes from standing at his graveside. Mom tried to talk her out of it, but I recognized that look in Fallon's eyes. It was the same expression Dad got when he talked about his missions, the same intensity that made him legendary among his Rangers. 4 years later, Fallon became the first woman in her BUDS class to ring the bell at graduation instead of quitting. I was there in Coronado when she earned her trident, watching her stand at attention with bruises still visible on her arms from Hell Week. Lieutenant Cruz Mendoza, her team leader, pulled me aside afterward. "Your sister's got something special," he said, his usually serious expression softening. "Most recruits, they survive training. Fallon conquered it. That was 2 years ago. Now we were deployed together in Mogadishu, part of a joint counter-terrorism task force targeting high-value individuals across the Horn of Africa. My Force Recon unit provided intelligence and overwatch while Fallon's SEAL team handled direct action missions. It should have been the perfect arrangement, letting me keep an eye on my little sister while she did what she'd trained her entire adult life to do. But something had changed about Fallon during our 3 months in Somalia. Back home, she was the life of every gathering, the one who could make Staff Sergeant Brick Johansson laugh until beer came out of his nose, the one who challenged Lieutenant Kai Nakamura to arm wrestling matches she somehow always won. In Mogadishu, she'd become quieter, more thoughtful. She still performed flawlessly on missions, still earned the respect of every operator in our combined unit, but there was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before. biggest change was the phone calls. Every evening after chow, Falcon would disappear to the communication tent with her satellite phone. At first I assumed she was calling Mom, or maybe some guy she'd met during her last leave. Military relationships were complicated, especially for women in special operations, and Falcon had always been private about her personal life. But the conversations I accidentally overheard didn't sound like romantic small talk. One night walking past the comm tent, I heard her speaking in what sounded like a foreign language. The rhythm was unfamiliar, full of sounds I couldn't place. When she emerged 20 minutes later, I asked her about it. "Just practicing with a study group," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You know me, always trying to improve myself." It was a reasonable explanation. Falcon had always been academic, earning a degree in international relations through correspondence courses while completing SEAL training. But something about her tone felt rehearsed, like she'd been preparing for that exact question. Lieutenant Mendoza noticed the change too. During our weekly briefings, he'd mention how Falcon seemed distracted during downtime, how she'd volunteer for extra duties that kept her busy when other operators were relaxing. Johansson joked that she was probably planning to write a book about being the first female SEAL, but even his humor couldn't mask his concern. The truth was, we were all concerned. Operating in Somalia required absolute trust between team members, and trust meant transparency. If Falcon was dealing with something personal, something that might affect her performance or judgment, we needed to know about it. But Falcon had always been stubborn, even as a kid. She'd learned to ride a bike by refusing our help until she figured it out herself. She'd mastered every challenge Dad put in front of her through pure determination and careful preparation. If she was keeping something from us, she had to believe. She had a good reason. I just never imagined that reason would end up saving all our lives, or that my little sister had been preparing for a mission none of us saw coming. The mission was supposed to be routine surveillance, the kind of operation we'd run dozens of times across Mogadishu without incident. Our target was a bustling marketplace in the Hamar Wayne district, where intelligence suggested arms dealers were moving weapons through civilian vendors. Lieutenant Mendoza's plan was textbook simple: establish overwatch positions, document transactions, identify key players, and extract without engagement. The problem started at 0630 hours when Hassan Abdullahi, our local interpreter, failed to appear at the designated rendezvous point. Hassan wasn't just any contractor. He was a former Somali National Army officer who'd worked with American forces for over 5 years, building a reputation for reliability that kept him alive in a city where collaborating with Americans was often a death sentence. In 18 months of operations, Hassan had never missed a meeting, never been late, never failed to provide the cultural context that meant the difference between successful intelligence gathering and catastrophic misunderstanding. "Maybe he's stuck in traffic," Johansson suggested, but his attempt at humor fell flat. We all knew Mogadishu traffic didn't delay someone like Hassan. Mendoza checked his watch. "We hold position for 15 minutes, then reassess." Those 15 minutes stretched like hours. From our overwatch position on a crumbling 3-story building, I could see the marketplace coming alive below us. Vendors arranged their goods, customers began filtering through the narrow alleys, and somewhere in that maze of humanity, weapons dealers were conducting business we couldn't understand without Hassan's translation. "Hassan's phone goes straight to voicemail," reported Lieutenant Nakamura, our communications specialist. "Either his phone's dead or he's in trouble." Falcon, positioned on the opposite rooftop, keyed her radio. "Movement on the north entrance." 3 vehicles, government plates, but occupants aren't uniformed police. Through my scope, I watched a convoy of black SUVs discharge passengers who moved with military precision, but wore civilian clothes. These weren't local law enforcement conducting routine patrols. They were organized, well-equipped, and scanning the crowd with the systematic efficiency of trained operators. "Hassan might not be the only one who's compromised," Mendoza said, quietly. "If someone leaked our operation, those could be hostiles looking for us." The situation deteriorated rapidly. Our intelligence had identified a high-value target, warlord Jamal Osman, who was scheduled to meet with foreign weapons suppliers in a compound 3 blocks from the marketplace. Without Hassan's linguistic support, we couldn't distinguish between innocent civilian conversations and potential security communications. Every Arabic phrase, every Somali exchange, every raised voice could be someone coordinating an attack against us. Worse, without proper translation, moving toward Osman's compound risked civilian casualties. One misunderstood word, one incorrect assumption about a civilian's intentions could trigger an international incident that would compromise American operations across the entire Horn of Africa. "Sir, we've got a problem," Nakamura reported. "Intercepts suggest Osman's meeting is happening ahead of schedule. If we don't move in the next 30 minutes, he's gone." Mendoza faced an impossible decision: abort the mission and lose a target. We'd been tracking for months, or proceed without linguistic support and risk everything. In special operations, hesitation killed people, but so did reckless action. From my position, I watched Fallon adjust her scope, tracking movement in the marketplace below. She'd been quieter than usual during the pre-mission briefing, but I'd attributed that to normal operational focus. Now, studying her profile through my binoculars, I noticed something different in her expression. She wasn't frustrated or concerned, like the rest of us. She looked conflicted, like she was wrestling with a decision that had nothing to do with tactical considerations. "Falcon, you seeing anything unusual on your side?" Mendoza asked. There was a long pause before she responded. "Negative, sir, but I need to discuss something with the team. Not over comms. We'll reassess at Rally Point Alpha." As we prepared to extract from our overwatch positions, abandoning the mission we'd spent weeks planning, I saw Fallon hesitate before moving toward the stairwell. She was staring down at the marketplace, her hand resting on her radio, as if she was debating whether to say something that would change everything. That hesitation should have been my first clue that my sister was carrying more than just tactical concerns. She was carrying a secret that could either salvage our failed mission or destroy the trust our unit had spent months building in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Rally Point Alpha was the abandoned warehouse 6 blocks from the marketplace, chosen specifically because its thick concrete walls would block any electronic surveillance. As our team regrouped inside the dusty building, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. We'd just aborted a mission 3 months in the planning, lost our most reliable interpreter, and potentially blown our only chance at capturing Jamal Osman. Mendoza pulled off his helmet and ran his hands through sweat-soaked hair. "Options, gentlemen. And lady," he added, nodding toward Fallon. "We could try again tomorrow with a different interpreter," suggested Johansson, though his voice lacked conviction. "Command's got other assets in the city. Osman won't be there." "Tomorrow," Nakamura replied flatly. "Intelligence says he's moving his operation after today's meeting." This was our window. I watched Fallon during this exchange, noting how she kept checking her watch and glancing toward the warehouse entrance like she was expecting someone. Her usual confidence had been replaced by something I'd never seen in her before, uncertainty mixed with what looked like guilt. "Sir," she said quietly, "I need to tell you all something about Hassan." Mendoza turned toward her, his expression shifting from frustration to concern. "What about Hassan?" Fallon took a deep breath, the kind you take before jumping out of an airplane or walking into a firefight. "Those phone calls I've been making every evening? They weren't to college friends or study groups. I've been taking Somali language lessons for the past 2 years. Hassan Abdullahi has been my tutor." The warehouse fell completely silent except for the distant sound of traffic outside. Johansson's mouth actually dropped open. Nakamura stared at her like she'd just announced she could fly. Mendoza's expression went through several stages of surprise, confusion, and something that might have been anger. "You speak Somali?" I heard myself ask, though it sounded like someone else's voice. "Conversationally fluent," she replied, meeting my eyes for the first time that day. "I can handle complex tactical communications, cultural nuances, religious references, regional dialects from Mogadishu to Kismayo." "Why the hell didn't you tell us?" Johansson exploded. "We could have used this information for months." Fallon's jaw tightened, and I recognized the defensive posture she'd developed as a kid whenever adults questioned her decisions. "Because I wasn't ready. Because I needed to be perfect before I risked other people's lives on my language skills. Because I knew you'd all react exactly like this. Like what? Mendoza asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Like I'd been lying to you instead of preparing to help you. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a grenade. She was right, and we all knew it. Instead of seeing 2 years of dedicated preparation, we were treating her linguistic skills like a betrayal of trust. There's more, she continued, her voice gaining strength. Hassan didn't miss our rendezvous because he was compromised by hostiles. He's being held in the same compound where Osman is conducting his meeting. 3 nights ago, during one of our lessons, Hassan told me he'd discovered something about American military equipment being sold through Osman's network. Equipment that shouldn't be available to anyone outside official channels. Jesus Christ, Nakamura whispered. Hassan was going to bring proof today, but someone got to him first. The people holding him don't know he's been working with us. They just know he's been asking questions about weapons shipments. If we don't get him out, he's dead. And whatever intelligence he discovered dies with him. Mendoza began pacing, his tactical mind clearly racing through possibilities. Even if you can handle the language, we don't have time to test your skills under operational pressure. One mistranslation could get civilians killed. Sir, Fallon said, and I heard echoes of our father's voice in her tone. Hassan taught me something during our first lesson. He said Falcon in Somali means the one who watches and waits. He gave me that translation when I told him my call sign. I've been watching and waiting for 2 years, preparing for exactly this situation. She pulled out a detailed hand-drawn map of the compound from her tactical vest. Hassan described this building's layout during our sessions. Every entrance, every blind spot, every cultural protocol we'd need to follow. I know where they're holding him and I know how to get him out. You've been planning a rescue operation? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I've been preparing for the day my family might need me to do something impossible, she replied, looking directly at me. Today's that day. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Fallon would approach the compound posing as a volunteer from a local medical aid organization, using her fluent Somali to convince the guards she was delivering supplies to nearby families. While she located Hassan and assessed the situation inside, we'd establish overwatch positions and wait for her signal to extract both targets. What we didn't expect was how completely Fallon would disappear into her cover identity. Watching through my scope from a rooftop 200 meters away, I barely recognized my sister as she approached the compound gate. She'd changed her entire bearing, adopting the modest posture of a local aid worker, her tactical gear hidden beneath traditional clothing Hassan had taught her to wear properly. When she spoke to the guards in rapid Somali, gesturing toward a canvas bag supposedly filled with medical supplies, even I was convinced she belonged there. She's good at this, Nakamura murmured through our comms, his voice filled with reluctant admiration. Too good, Mendoza replied, and I heard the worry he was trying to hide. Falcon, report your status. Inside the compound came Fallon's whispered response. Hassan's alive but injured. They've been interrogating him about weapons shipments. Sir, there's something else. The foreign dealers Osman's meeting with aren't who we thought they were. Through the compound's windows, I could see figures moving in what appeared to be a large central room. Osman himself was clearly visible, a tall man with distinctive scarring on his face that matched our intelligence photos. But the 3 men, sitting across from him at a wooden table, looked nothing like typical arms dealers. Elaborate, Falcon, Mendoza ordered. One of them just spoke English, American English. They're discussing serial numbers on military equipment, talking about covering tracks and maintaining deniability. Sir, these aren't foreign buyers. These are Americans selling our own weapons to Osman. The words hit our team like a physical blow. We'd been tracking what we thought was a standard arms trafficking operation, but we'd stumbled into something much worse. American military equipment being sold to hostile forces represented more than criminal activity. It was treason, potentially compromising operations across multiple theaters. Can you identify the Americans? I asked, my finger instinctively moving to my rifle's trigger. Negative, but I can hear them clearly. One just mentioned something about the Kandahar shipment and keeping the Pentagon in the dark. They're Not just selling equipment, they're selling intelligence about our operations. Suddenly, Fallon's voice became urgent. Hassan's trying to communicate something. He's pointing toward a room in the back of the compound. There are more Americans back there, and they've got laptops, communication equipment. This isn't just a weapons deal. It's a command center. The situation escalated instantly when one of the American contractors noticed something suspicious about Fallon's positioning. Through my scope, I watched him stand abruptly, pointing in her direction, while speaking rapidly to Osman's security team. "Falcon, you're blown!" Mendoza barked. "Extract now!" But instead of retreating, I watched my sister do something that made my blood run cold and filled me with pride simultaneously. She began speaking loudly in Somali, not to the contractors or Osman, but to the guards themselves. She's telling them the Americans are here to betray them. Nakamura translated, his Arabic allowing him to catch some of the words. She's saying the Americans are planning to sell them defective equipment and then report the location to U.S. forces for airstrikes. The effect was immediate and chaotic. Osman's guards, already suspicious of foreign involvement in their operations, turned their weapons toward the American contractors. The contractors, realizing their cover was blown, reached for their own weapons. Hassan, seizing the confusion, broke free from his restraints and dove for cover. "All teams execute extraction," Mendoza ordered, and we moved like the well-trained unit we were. But Fallon wasn't finished. As gunfire erupted inside the compound, she continued her psychological warfare, using her perfect Somali to coordinate, with Hassan turning Osman's own security force against the American traitors, while simultaneously guiding our approach vectors through real-time translation. When the dust settled 20 minutes later, we had Osman in custody, 3 American contractors under arrest, Hassan safe despite his injuries, and a treasure trove of intelligence about compromised operations that would take months to fully assess. My little sister had just orchestrated one of the most complex psychological operations I'd ever witnessed, and she'd done it in a language she'd learned in secret while the rest of us never suspected she was preparing for exactly this moment. A secure facility outside Mogadishu, intelligence officers from 3 different agencies took turns questioning our team about what we'd witnessed in that compound. The evidence we'd recovered painted a picture of corruption that reached higher into the defense contracting world than anyone had imagined. Serial numbers from the seized weapons matched equipment reported lost or destroyed in operations across Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. The laptops contained communications proving a network of rogue contractors had been systematically stealing and reselling American military assets for over 2 years. But what impressed the intelligence officers most wasn't the scope of the criminal operation we'd uncovered. It was how Fallon had orchestrated the entire takedown using nothing but language and cultural understanding. She turned their own paranoia against them, explained Colonel Patricia Vance, the intelligence officer leading the debriefing. By speaking directly to the Somali guards in their native language about American betrayal, she exploited existing tensions and fractured their alliance in real time. It's textbook psychological operations, but executed by someone who supposedly had no formal training in the field. Fallon sat quietly during most of the debriefing, answering questions with the same methodical precision she brought to weapons maintenance. But I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of carrying a secret for 2 years finally lifting from her shoulders. Hassan recovered from his injuries at a military medical facility, refusing evacuation to Germany until he could personally thank Fallon for the rescue. When they finally met in the hospital, their conversation was entirely in Somali, but the emotion needed no translation. Hassan had tears in his eyes as he grasped my sister's hands, speaking words that made her smile for the first time in months. "He's saying he always knew I was meant for something special," she told me afterward. "He said teaching me his language was the most important thing he'd ever done for America." The immediate operational changes came swiftly. Hassan was officially recruited as a Department of Defense interpreter with security clearances that recognized his proven loyalty. The intelligence network he'd helped uncover led to arrests of contractors and officials across multiple continents. Equipment worth millions of dollars was recovered before it could reach hostile forces. But the personal changes took longer to process. Johansson approached Fallon during chow 3 days after the mission. "I owe you an apology," he said, his usual swagger replaced by genuine humility. "I thought you didn't trust us. Turns out you were protecting us by making sure you were ready when we needed you most." Nakamura's response was more direct. He recommended Fallon for a Bronze Star with V device, writing in his report that her extraordinary preparation and cultural competency directly prevented American casualties and compromised operations. The commendation was approved within weeks. Mendoza's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of reprimanding Fallon for withholding operational capabilities, he assigned her to develop new training protocols for the entire SEAL community. Within 6 months, every team deploying to foreign operations would be required to have at least one member with conversational fluency in local languages. But it was Mom's reaction, when we finally called home, that hit me hardest. "Your father always said the best soldiers fight the battles others don't see coming," she told Fallon through tears. "He would be so proud of how you honored that lesson." For me, the revelation changed everything I thought I knew about leadership and preparation. I'd spent 3 years worrying about protecting my little sister, never realizing she'd been preparing to protect all of us. Her secret wasn't about lacking trust in the team. It was about taking responsibility for capabilities none of us had thought to develop. 6 months later, Fallon's training program had been adopted by every Special Operations Command. Her approach to cultural preparation became the standard for overseas deployments. The call sign, Falcon, took on new meaning throughout the Special Operations community, representing not just tactical excellence, but the kind of foresight that turns potential disasters into mission successes. Today, when young operators ask about the most important skills for Special Operations, I tell them about my sister Fallon. I explain that the most dangerous missions aren't always the ones where bullets fly. Sometimes they're the ones where success depends on understanding people, cultures, and languages that textbooks can't teach you. The best warriors, I learned, aren't just the ones who can fight. They're the ones who prepare for battles that haven't started yet, who develop capabilities others don't know they need, and who understand that sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones nobody can see. Fallon taught me that being ready isn't just about training your body or sharpening your tactics. It's about preparing your mind for challenges that don't exist yet, and trusting that when the moment comes, all that hidden preparation will save lives.